Wife asked me for an open marriage, said she deserved to sleep with other men while I was deployed. She started cheating anyway when I refused, then got caught by her own parents on a date, and now her family is helping me divorce her. I'm a 29-year-old Marine, and my soon-to-be ex-wife is 27. We've been married for 4 years, together for 6. This whole situation has been absolutely surreal, and I'm still processing everything that's happened over the past 2 months. It started in early October when I got orders for a 9-month deployment to Okinawa, Japan. It wasn't my first deployment. I'd done 2 tours in the Middle East before we got married, but it was my first since we tied the knot. I sat down with my wife, let's call her Jessica, to talk about the logistics, finances, power of attorney, communication schedules, all the usual stuff military couples deal with. I thought we were on the same page. We'd talked about the possibility of deployments before we got married. She knew what she was signing up for. Or so I thought. About a week after I told her about the deployment, Jessica asked if we could have a serious talk over dinner. I figured she wanted to discuss her concerns about me being gone, maybe talk about her fears or how we'd stay connected. I was completely blindsided by what came next. She said, and I'm paraphrasing here because I was in shock, that she'd been thinking a lot about our marriage and the deployment. She said that 9 months was a long time for a woman in her prime to be alone. She told me she loved me but that she had needs that couldn't be put on hold for 3/4 of a year. Then she dropped the bomb, she wanted an open marriage. But here's the kicker, she only wanted it open on her side. I sat there, fork frozen halfway to my mouth, trying to process what I was hearing. She went on to explain that it wouldn't be fair to me to have the same freedom because I'd be busy with work and wouldn't have time for other women anyway. She said she'd been reading about ethical non-monogamy online and that it was a perfectly valid lifestyle choice. She promised she'd be safe, discreet, and that it wouldn't affect our marriage at all. I'm not proud of how I reacted, but I was hurt and angry. I told her absolutely not. I said that marriage meant something to me, that I'd be gone serving our country, and the least she could do was remain faithful like millions of other military spouses managed to do. I might have raised my voice. I definitely said some things about what I thought of her ethical non-monogamy when it only went one direction. She got defensive and said I was being controlling and old-fashioned. She accused me of not caring about her happiness and said I was prioritizing the military over her needs. We went back and forth for hours. She cried. I probably said some hurtful things. Eventually, she said fine and stormed off to bed. The next few weeks were tense. We barely spoke beyond basic necessities. I thought maybe she just needed time to cool off and see reason. I tried to initiate conversations about our future, about making plans for when I got back, anything to reconnect. She was distant and cold. About 2 weeks before I was supposed to ship out, things seemed to improve slightly. She apologized for springing that on me and said she'd been stressed about me leaving. We had a few good days. We went out to dinner, spent time together, even had a decent conversation about how we'd handle the separation. I thought we'd moved past it. I was so wrong. I left in mid-November. The first few weeks in Okinawa were the usual adjustment period, getting settled, falling into the routine, dealing with the time difference for calls home. Jessica and I texted daily and video called a few times a week. Everything seemed normal, or as normal as it could be. But around the 3-week mark, I started noticing changes. She was less available for calls. Her texts got shorter and less frequent. When we did video chat, she seemed distracted, like she was waiting for the call to end. I chalked it up to her adjusting to life without me around. Then the excuses started. She couldn't talk because she was going out with friends. She had a work event. She was tired. She had a headache. There was always something. I tried not to be the suspicious, controlling husband, so I gave her space. I trusted her. In early December, about 3 weeks into deployment, I got a weird message from a buddy of mine back home, let's call him Mike. Mike was former military, now worked as a firefighter in our city. He texted me asking if Jessica and I were having problems. When I asked why, he said he'd seen her out at a bar downtown with some guy, and they looked pretty cozy. I immediately called Jessica. She answered, which was surprising since she'd been dodging my calls. I asked her about it as calmly as I could. She laughed it off and said Mike must have seen her with her coworker Dave, they'd gone out for drinks with a group from work. She said Dave was gay and that there was nothing to worry about. She seemed so casual about it that I believed her. Mike later sent me a message saying maybe he'd misread the situation and sorry for worrying me. I thanked him and tried to put it out of my mind. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I started paying more attention to her social media, which I know sounds paranoid, but my gut was screaming at me. She'd always been active on Instagram and Facebook, posting pictures of her meals, her outings with friends, the usual stuff. But suddenly she wasn't posting much at all. And when she did, she wasn't tagging her location anymore. When I asked about her day during our calls, her answers were vague. She used to tell me everything, funny stories from work, drama with her friends, what she had for lunch. Now it was all fine and nothing special and just the usual. I tried to tell myself I was being paranoid because of the deployment stress. But that nagging feeling wouldn't go away. Then, 2 weeks ago, I got a call that changed everything. It was Jessica's mom, Linda. Now, Linda and I have always had a good relationship. She's a sweet lady, very traditional, very Catholic. She thinks the world of her daughter but has always been fair to me. The phone call came at 2 a.m. my time, which meant it was early afternoon back home. Linda was crying so hard I could barely understand her at first. When she finally calmed down enough to speak clearly, this is what she told me. She and Jessica's dad, Tom, had gone to lunch at a nice Italian restaurant downtown for their anniversary. It was one of those white tablecloth places they like to go for special occasions. They were seated in a semi-private booth area toward the back. About 20 minutes into their meal, Tom glanced up and froze. Sitting in a booth across the restaurant, mostly hidden behind a decorative partition but partially visible, was Jessica. And she was on a date. Now, Linda said her first thought was maybe I'd come home early to surprise Jessica, which made her excited. But then she realized the man with Jessica wasn't me. He was shorter, had blonde hair, I'm brunette, and was clean-shaven, I have a beard. And Jessica and this man were intimate. Holding hands across the table. The guy was stroking her arm. At one point, Linda watched them kiss. Linda said she felt like she'd been slapped. Tom wanted to march over there immediately, but Linda stopped him because she wanted to be absolutely sure of what she was seeing. Maybe it was someone who just looked like Jessica? So they waited and watched for a few more minutes. Then Jessica got up to go to the restroom, and as she walked past, Linda got a clear view of her face. It was definitely her daughter. No question. When Jessica came back to her table, Linda and Tom got up and walked over. Linda said Jessica's face went white as a sheet when she saw them. The guy with her looked confused. Tom apparently asked, very loudly, "Does your husband know you're here?" The restaurant went quiet. People were staring. The guy with Jessica started to stammer, asking what was going on. Jessica tried to say that I knew, that we had an understanding, but Linda cut her off and said, "That's a lie. I'm calling him right now to confirm." Jessica panicked and tried to grab her mom's phone. Tom stepped between them. The restaurant manager came over asking if there was a problem. The whole thing was apparently a massive scene. Jessica's date, turns out his name is Chad, because of course it is, kept asking what was happening. When he finally understood that Jessica was married and her husband was deployed overseas, he apparently said what the fuck. Threw some cash on the table, and walked out. Jessica tried to leave too, but her parents blocked her path and demanded she go home with them right then and there. She refused. Tom told her that if she didn't come with them immediately, they'd drive straight to JAG office on base and report her for adultery themselves. She went with them. Over the next hour-long phone call, Linda and Tom told me everything. Once they got Jessica home, they demanded the truth. At first, she tried to stick to her story about us having an arrangement. But when they threatened to call me right there with her in the room, she broke down and admitted everything. She'd been seeing Chad for about a month. They met at a gym she'd joined. He was a personal trainer there. She said she'd only meant for it to be friendly at first, but things progressed. She admitted they'd been intimate multiple times. She swore she still loved me and that this didn't mean anything, it was just physical. But then Linda asked her about the open marriage conversation before I deployed. Jessica apparently broke down crying harder and admitted that she'd been planning this before I even left. She'd met Chad about 2 weeks before I got my deployment orders. The open marriage request was her way of trying to get permission to continue seeing him while I was gone. When I refused, she decided to do it anyway and just hide it. She figured 9 months was plenty of time to get it out of her system, and I'd never need to know. Linda was sobbing as she told me all this. She kept apologizing, saying she'd raised her daughter better than this, that she was ashamed and heartbroken. Tom got on the phone and told me in no uncertain terms that they supported me 100% and would help me however I needed. I was in shock. I think I went numb. I thanked them for telling me and said I needed some time to process. Linda made me promise I'd call them back soon. I said I would. I sat in my barracks room for I don't know how long, just staring at the wall. Everything made sense now. The distance, the excuses, the changed behavior. She'd been cheating on me almost the entire deployment. Maybe even before. I eventually called my command and let them know what was happening. The Marine Corps takes adultery seriously, especially when it involves deployed service members. They were supportive and told me to take whatever time I needed to handle the situation. Then I called a lawyer. A really good divorce lawyer who specializes in military cases. I explained everything, and he told me I had an incredibly strong case, especially with witness testimony from her own parents. Jessica's attempts at damage control. Jessica tried to call me about a dozen times that first day. I didn't answer. She sent probably 50 texts, everything from apologizing to blaming me for abandoning her with the deployment to saying her parents had blown things out of proportion to begging for another chance. I finally responded with one message: my lawyer will be in touch. Don't contact me again. She didn't listen. She kept trying to call and text. She sent me emails. She even tried to video call in the middle of the night my time. I blocked her on everything. What I learned from Linda and Tom, who I stayed in contact with, was that Jessica had a complete meltdown after I didn't respond. She tried to say her parents had ruined her life by confronting her. She blamed them for not minding their own business. She said I was overreacting and being cruel by not giving her a chance to explain. Linda finally snapped at her and said something like, "You cheated on your husband while he's serving overseas, lied to everyone, and tried to manipulate him into accepting it. You did this to yourself." This is where things got a bit unusual, but in a good way. Jessica's entire family basically disowned her over this. Her parents, her two brothers, her grandmother, all of them reached out to me to express their support and apologize for Jessica's actions. Her older brother Mark is former Navy. He was absolutely furious when he found out. He told me that what Jessica did was unforgivable and that he was embarrassed to call her his sister. He offered to help me move my stuff out of our house if I needed it. Her younger brother Tyler drove to our house and packed up all my personal belongings, my military memorabilia, my clothes, everything. He put it all in storage for me and sent me the details. He told Jessica she should be ashamed of herself and that he didn't want to speak to her again until she got her act together. Linda and Tom hired a real estate agent to assess the house, which was in both our names. They helped my lawyer get access to financial records. Tom, who's a CPA, went through all our accounts and credit cards to document any suspicious charges. They found plenty: expensive dinners, hotel rooms, gifts that I certainly never received. Jessica's grandmother, who's in her 80s and the sweetest woman you'll ever meet, called me crying and said she'd be praying for me. She told me that Jessica's grandfather, who passed away years ago, would be turning in his grave if he knew what his granddaughter had done. My lawyer filed for divorce within 3 days of the restaurant incident. Given the evidence, witness testimony from her parents, the financial records showing suspicious charges, text message records showing her lies about her whereabouts, and Jessica's own admission to her parents, he said we'd likely get a favorable outcome on everything. We're going for fault-based divorce on grounds of adultery. In our state, that affects alimony and asset division. My lawyer is confident I'll keep most of my military benefits separate, and will split marital assets with me getting the favorable end due to her fault. Jessica lawyered up too, but apparently her attorney advised her that fighting this was going to cost her a lot of money with very little chance of success. Her parents refused to help her pay for a lengthy legal battle. She's on her own financially. The best part? Her parents are willing to testify in court if needed. Her own mother and father are prepared to take the stand and describe, under oath, catching their daughter on a date with another man while her husband was deployed. That's unprecedented leverage. From what I hear through her family, Jessica's life has fallen apart. Chad wanted nothing to do with her after learning she was married and had lied to him about it. He apparently told other people at the gym what happened, and now everyone there knows she's a cheater. She quit the gym out of embarrassment. Her friends have distanced themselves from her. Most of our mutual friends were military families who were disgusted by what she did. Her own friends thought it was terrible. She's essentially been socially isolated. She's still living in our house. I'm obviously still deployed, but her parents told her she needs to find somewhere else to live once the divorce is finalized because they're not helping her afford it. She's been looking for a cheaper apartment. She lost weight, apparently, from the stress. Linda says she looks terrible and barely leaves the house except for work. Part of me feels bad for her, but then I remember that she planned this, executed it, and only felt sorry when she got caught. Honestly? I'm doing okay, all things considered. The first few days were brutal. I felt betrayed, humiliated, angry, heartbroken, all of it. I questioned everything about our relationship. How long had she been unhappy? Had she ever really loved me? Was I a fool for not seeing the signs? But then I realized something: I did nothing wrong. I was a good husband. I communicated, I was faithful, I supported her dreams, I was present in our marriage. She made a choice to betray that. Her choices are not a reflection of my worth. I've been talking to a counselor on base, which has helped. I've been working out more, staying busy, focusing on my job. My unit has been incredibly supportive. My buddies have made sure I'm not isolating myself. The hardest part is the betrayal by someone I trusted completely. I never doubted her. When Mike first told me he saw her with someone, I defended her. I believed her lies because I couldn't imagine she'd do something like this to me. That naivety hurts. But I'm also grateful, weirdly enough. Grateful that I found out relatively early. Grateful that her parents are people of integrity who did the right thing even though it meant exposing their daughter. Grateful that I have such a strong support system. Grateful that I'm getting out of a marriage with someone who clearly didn't respect me or our vows. The irony of this whole situation isn't lost on me. She asked for an open marriage because she didn't want to deny herself for 9 months while I was deployed. When I said no, she decided to cheat anyway. And she got caught 6 weeks in. If she'd just been honest with me from the start and said I don't think I can handle deployment, maybe we could have had a different conversation. Maybe we would have separated amicably. Maybe we could have parted as friends. But instead, she lied, manipulated, and betrayed me. And now she's losing everything: her marriage, her family's respect, her social circle, probably a lot of money in the divorce, and her own self-respect. She gambled that she could have her cake and eat it too, and she lost spectacularly. Moving forward. I've got about 6 more months left on this deployment. The divorce should be finalized by the time I get back, or shortly after. I'm planning to re-enlist and maybe look at a permanent change of station to start fresh somewhere new. Linda and Tom have told me I'm always welcome in their home and that they still consider me family. That means a lot to me. They're good people who didn't deserve to be put in this situation. As for dating again? I'm not ready yet. I need time to heal and rebuild my trust. But I know I'll get there eventually. I'm young, I'm in good shape, I have a solid career, and I'm told I'm decent looking. I'll be fine. Jessica, on the other hand, is going to have to live with what she did. She's going to have to explain to future partners why her marriage ended. She's going to have to live with her family's disappointment. She's going to have to look at herself in the mirror and know she destroyed a good thing because she couldn't keep her vows for a few months. That's her burden to bear, not mine. I never thought I'd be a divorce statistic before 30, but here we are. If there's any lesson in this, it's that people will show you who they really are if you pay attention. And sometimes, the trash takes itself out. I'm focusing on my future now. I have my health, my career, my honor, and my integrity. That's more than Jessica can say. Thanks for reading this novel. I just needed to get it all out. If anyone else is going through something similar, just know that you'll survive it. It hurts like hell, but you'll come out stronger on the other side. Semper Fi. Update: a lot of people have been asking for updates, and there's a bit more to tell. Jessica apparently tried to show up at her parents' house last week unannounced. Tom didn't let her in. She caused a scene on their front porch until the neighbors came out. Her dad told her she wasn't welcome until she showed genuine remorse and understanding of what she'd done. She left crying. My lawyer also informed me that Jessica's lawyer approached him about settling out of court. They want to avoid testimony from her parents. We declined. We're proceeding with the full divorce process. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes.